It's a very good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. We continue with the journey of telling the ZPRA story, because what I find interesting is that there are so many stories that we have never heard of. There are so many heroes that we've never been told about, and we have taken upon ourselves to tell our story for the benefit of us and our kids and for the benefit of history. I mean, growing up, I never heard so many stories about the exploits and the heroism or the good works that were done by ZPRA. And we want to know more about the history of the liberation struggle, who played what role. And today in my program, I'll be talking to Ndimande Mathe, also known as Walker for those who were in the liberation struggle. So he played a very important role in the liberation struggle. Not only is he a survivor of the Morogoro fights, but he also was part of the ZPRA battalion that fought with the Rhodesians in the back of the Gorges. And if you read history, you know that a lot of white guys or Rhodesians have written about the back of the Gorges that lasted about 7 days. And I think it was one of the last battles of ZPRA and one of the last operations by the Rhodesian Air Force. On the ZPRA side, a lot has not been said about this battle, but I know it was commanded by Madliwa Khumalo, who was one of the battalion commanders. But also after independence, Mathe was involved in the integration, assembly points, in the education of the army, and is one of the people who really has done a lot for the country, and we'll be knowing more about him in our program today. Babu Mathe, welcome to the program. And my first question is, can you please tell us about yourself?
My name is Ndimande Mathe. I was born in Chodocho at a place called Madliwa under Chief Matupula. That's Madliwa Khumalo. That is the place I was born, and I grew up until I attained adulthood status.
So when did you join the liberation struggle?
I joined the liberation struggle in 1975 in Botswana. I crossed to Botswana in 1975.
Yes, so when you get there, where do you go?
During those days, it was very difficult, because that was the period when prior to that, the nationalist leaders in Rhodesia had been released from prison. People like Joshua Nkomo, Ndabani'Stole, Otekere, Kabe, and so forth. In fact, the cream of the liberation leaders of that moment were released in 1974. So there was no clear cut to those of us who were going out, whether you were ZANU, ZAPU, or whatever, because people were mingled up under the umbrella of ANC that was being interimly led by Bishop Mzoreo. So in 1975, when we went to Botswana, we were locked up in prison, and were recruits for the Rhodesian struggle, not distinguished from ZANLA, ZPRA, or what. No, it was as if we were all recruits for the ANC that was led by Bishop Mzoreo. I think you know that stage.
So this time, how then do you find yourself in ZPRA camps?
So what happened is the process now of leaving Botswana, because no one was really in charge, either ZAPU or ZANLA, because those were the main people who had forces. They were the people who had experience in training people. So no one was really in charge. So we stayed a lot of time in Botswana until around about after 6 or 7 months, they started a movement of going to Zambia for training. But as I'm telling you, the situation was not clear, In Zambia, a lot of things had happened. Herbert Stepo had been killed. The Zambian government had a problem with the ZANLA, the ZANU side of the struggle. So the Zambians had taken a decision to expel the ZANLA forces together with the ZANU party. And they were giving us a camp that was originally a ZANU camp, which is called Nampundwe. I have seen it featuring in your papers, in a lot of social medias. That camp was originally a ZANU camp. So because of that fracas of 1974-1975, the Zambians expelled the ZANU forces and they gave that camp. I'm not sure whether they were giving it to the ANC or they were giving it to ZAP. But definitely, after expelling ZAP, we occupied that camp. And we who were aligned to ZAP became the predominant force in that camp. But as recruits from Botswana, we were still together. No one was saying, I am for ZPRA, I am for ZANLA or whatever. No, it was only the liberation fighters of Rhodesia. And the aim there, especially on the top echelons, they were trying to form, they were pending the route to form this thing that was called ZIPA. So that this could be the first recruits that will be trained as a ZPRA force, as a ZIPA force.
So where do you get your training?
I got my training in Tanzania initially.
Yeah, which year in the camp?
In Morogoro camp.
Okay.
Of course, before I went to Morogoro, from there, before we were separated, we went to another camp that was called Mbakala. In that camp, we were still together as recruits.
ZPRA and ZANLA.
ZPRA and ZANLA. And it is in that camp which indicated who are the people who are for ZPRA and who are the people who are for ZANLA, even though we're now under ZIPA at that period. That is the middle and the end of 1975.
So kwakukanya njani ukuthi lo ZIPRA lo ZANLA?
And you know, when you are a group of people, associate how you associate your line of discussion and so forth. So it was indicating now who are ZIPRA and who are ZANLA. And what's more, during that period, a lot of things were happening, and they were happening very fast. Here in Rhodesia, people like the ZAP leadership, it called a Congress. And Mzorewa declined to participate in that Congress. But the old man had called a Congress, and Nkomo was chosen as the leader of ANC Zimbabwe, you see. So he began talks with the Rhodesian government. So we're taken as people who are aligned to Nkomo because the aim of the Tanzanian government, people like Nyerere, people like Samora Machel, were saying now the leader of Rhodesia will come from the barrel of the gun. They don't want politicians to interfere with the military wing. But it was difficult, especially to ZIPRA cadres, because ourselves were the youth wing of ZAP. We were not only going to join the struggle, we were people who were activists in this country. Now we refused to that notion. We said no. Tina, we are politicians, we know what we want. Nkomo is right, he has the mandate to speak to the Rhodesians. After all, a war will never end without talking. So our songs were also in line with supporting the old man, what he is doing, much to the chagrin of the Tanzanian government. It angered the Tanzanian government, and so even amanya recruiters are aligned to ZANU. They were also mocking us. Hey, we support Nkomo, sell out and so forth.
So there was always tension here?
There was always tension, very, very big tensions. There was a law, it was very, yes, the situation was very hostile. It was, tension yakhona was so undescribable.
So ingoma lezihlabela about
ingoma ezinje zona ezinje zestrap njengoba thina for instance sizafaka ingoma njengoba yathi uNkomo Khumalo Smith khuluma la yesivumelane, something like talk to him, we agree so that we can liberate our country. Then labana labo bazabe kuhlabela ezabo mainly in Shona language, be castigate what is happening, promoting what they think must happen. So that was the situation. And at the same time, we had the problem of the Tanzanian government. There is this man, he ended up being the ambassador here, Hashim Mpita. I think you know him. Hashim Mpita by then was the secretary of Liberation Committee. He was a colonel. So from time to time he was coming to the camp. The camp was nearer Dar es Salaam. It was the capital city by then. So anytime he could come in. So, and he was saying, you people don't have to support Amalita's Nkomo. You have got to break from that man. I remember one day, him when we were challenging him, saying, what Nkomo is doing is an ostrich camp. That is what he said. It's an ostrich camp. How can he say he's staying in Rhodesia while he know that the Rhodesians are colonizing Zimbabwe? And we reminded him, we think your memory, Mr. Mpita, is very shallow or poor. Nkomo in the 1960s tried to form a government in exile here in Tanzania. You said he is a coward, he must go back. Now he is back, he is talking to the enemy, trying to liberate. You are saying he must run away. What do you want him to do exactly? So with a problem with the Tanzanian government, because the Tanzanian government was taking sides with ZAN. But which ZAN now? Because as I'm telling you, the situation there was fluid. There were a lot of leaders also.
So there is a fight between ZANLA and ZPRA at Morogoro camp. Were you there?
Yes, I was there.
Tell us about it.
What happened is, when the time came at Mbagala, where all of us lifted to Morogoro. It was sometime late 1975. We all lifted to Morogoro for training because that was the aim. It was supposed to be a zipper force. And people like Unongo, Mangena usually came there to address us.
So who were the trainers in that camp?
The trainers were both instructors from ZANLA and ZIP.
Do you remember any names?
Yes. This one, present day Army Commander was there. Valerio was there. People like Lo Sanda Buchona, Lo Kakisa Unle, he was there. People like Omyosa Pilamanunle Utupu, I don't know whether you know him. Was there. Get the prominent people here in Blawa.
So on the ZANLA side, who were there?
No, they were ZPRA.
Okay.
On the ZANLA side, I don't know them very much because what happened is, I think about 4 or 5 days we're running together, trying to train together, and then ZANLA withdrew. You see, Morogoro was a ZPRA camp. I don't know what they ended up saying. No, the type of training which is being conducted here, we don't want it. So
what type of training was that?
Normally guerrilla training. It was that was mainly because of politically for rather than a military training. Those were just political manifestation of political hostility. So they withdrew from the training. So we remained alone. This is why I cannot know most of the ZANLA instructors. I still remember people like Gray, because we moved with him from Mbagala. I also remember the late Agwin Gambeu, Brigadier Chimombe. I think he died in Congo, but he was an instructor there on the ZANLA side. But I don't know them because they didn't participate with us for a long time.
So then how does the fight start?
So what happened is the hostility continued. You see, we have never, the camp had never experienced peace. So we were divided. West more, we only 137, the ZPRA group. So when we were in Morogoro,
And how many were ZANLA?
I don't know. There were few, those who were with us. There were something like 80 something. And when we were in Morogoro now, trucks came from Mozambique or from another part of Tanzania with more than 500 something ZANLA forces. So they filled the camp. So there were many now. But they refused the training with us. Now, so at the end, we ended up doing everything separately, including cooking at the kitchens, running in the morning, anything. We ended up being separated. So they said no, because instructors cannot participate in the camp in everything. The only place, as you can see the setup as I'm telling you, where people are obliged or are forced to meet is in eating, because the rations come for the camp. There are no rations for ZANLA, rations for ZPRA, or rations for instructors. No, they just come for the camp. Now, it will compel you to talk. I was the logistic for the trainers myself, and there was another guy, the logistic for recruits for ZANLA. Most of the time we will argue on who gets what and who gets what. So the argument...
So you were arguing about food?
Yes, we could argue about food. In addition to other arguments, in the evening people will argue about singing, but they will mock each other. People will mock each other on walking in the camp. People will mock each other on how they train. For instance, one of the main reasons, according to what I heard, is in ZPRA, they have got some obstacle crossing where a man will crawl under an entangled wire, you see, and instructors firing on top. And the ZANLAs objected to that.
So if you raise your head, you die?
If you raise your head, you die, definitely.
Remember, ZPRA used live ammunition.
Live ammunition, there was no blank, there was no dummies. If you raise your head, you will die. So this type of training, the ZANLAs objected to that. They said, no, we cannot crawl under a firearm being fired. This type of training means the instructor have got to be very careful. The recruit also have got to be very careful. So they refused. So there were a lot of arguments. There was no concentrated argument. The people argued on food, or people argued on training, or people argued everything. As long as it is done by a ZPRA, ZANLAs will not be careful, will not agree with it. And what I discovered is that mainly, of course, people will say because I was a ZPRA, but there was no instruction from the ZPRA side to hate ZANLA because I was there. But the way the ZANLAs hated us, you could see with this thing, these people have got instruction. Plus, the setup in ZPRA, as you know, ZPRA was commanded by ZAPO, and the ZAPO was a mixture of Shona and Ndebele people. There was no room to exercise tribalism. But there was room to exercise tribalism in ZANLA. Because you know, even if how hostile you are as people, there are some light moments one day or and so forth where you could talk. They could tell us point blank, good gentlemen, you are very stupid. When we go home, If we win, we will kill you. You people, you will die. But if you win, you people, suppose Zap wins, and Zapta is beaten, you will do nothing to us. Look at your leadership. Those are our brothers, fathers, and uncles. They will never kill us. Can you not see this? You see? And exactly this is what happened when we came home.
So the day of fight, the fight in Morogoro, what happened?
So the day of the fight, it was in the morning, as usual. And that morning was it's either it was a Sunday or it was a holiday, because we were not going for training that day. So we wake up early in the morning as usual. We went in the quartermaster. The ZANLA locals and comrades also came. And the argument started at the kitchen. I mean, you know, in history, they are saying it is a spark.
Yeah.
It's not the cause of the problem. No. Some people might mistake it, thinking it is the cause of the problem. No. There was a long history of disagreements, very hostile one indeed. But that day, that was used as a spark. So the disagreement was on how to share the rations of that day. So when we were arguing, I was inside myself in the storeroom with that other guy. A group of ZANLA forces came, and I didn't see what was happening exactly to those other ZPRA who were outside. What I heard is the gunshots. So inside the storeroom, I also had to crawl. Unfortunately, I want to be ZANLA, and everybody in the camp who had a gun was firing. You see?
ZPRA or ZANLA?
Yeah, we had one guy, ZPRA, Castro, was the commander of the group. He had an AK, that guy. But most of the people didn't have weapons. But ZANLA, because of a friendship, Tanzanian forces and so forth, most of them had guns. I don't know how they obtained them. So, they started by shooting. He was alive. I don't know whether he's dead now or Mangwana. So after shooting Mangwana, pumped away storeroom, Castro also opened fire. You see, then the whole thing broke loose. My instructors, they started firing both sides.
Firing each other?
Firing each other. Anyone who recognizes ZPRA, he fires. ZPRA, he fires.
So how long did this last, the fight?
Basically, I think about 5-6 minutes. But the problem isn't, you know, when people start firing in a camp, people run away. A vacuum is left, the camp will remain empty. Now, ZPRA, because the camp was theirs, they organized themselves. They came back. So, which means if firing could not stop, they will fire. Because there are some few individuals who came back and occupied the camp.
These were ZPRA?
Yeah, those were ZPRA. They came back and reorganized themselves and occupied the camp.
So any ZANLA was coming back was being fired?
Definitely. Any ZANLA was coming back was being fired. But mina ngagijima ngaphume enkambeni, I went right around the camp because iwe ngangiphume kiyo yayingiyamaZANLA. So I had to go right around the camp, came back to cover near the camp. And my instructors ZANLA, amanye, they came back in the camp, especially around about 5 past something 5, they came back and they were joined by the Tanzanians and they went inside the camp. So my Tanzanian trucks came, they started lifting ZPRA at a corner and waiting for other ZANLA and other ZPRA take them to different locations.
So this fight lasted the whole day?
This fight lasted the whole day. That even though there wasn't effective fighting, there was no effective firing. You could hear a sound of a gun, but usually kwakuyikholwa ukuthi umuntu engabuya la etuzocinga amatanzania lesembizi ambuza ukuthi ayu ZPRA ZANLA ngena ngale the whole day.
So how does this stop? How do you then get back to camp? Or you leave the camp that day?
That day the camp was left for some days because we were grouped at a certain police camp. And ZANLA, I didn't see them from that day.
So how many people died in this whole fight?
On our side, of course, I think 4 or 5 people died, but I don't know. And ZANLA, I don't know. I'm misleading. I don't know. But there were no big numbers.
So is then ZANLA's left the camp from that time?
From that day, ZANLA, they left the camp. I think they were shifted to Tanzania at another corner, or they were taken to Mozambique. But from that day, when we came back, ZANLA did not come back to Morogoro.
So from Morogoro, where do you go?
From Morogoro, there, we had finished training. I had finished training myself. I was a trained personnel in that camp. The whole group, in fact, had finished training. Now, our chief of staff had another idea. He wanted to form a commando unit. That commando unit, he was saying, he wants that commando unit to operate from the Zambezi River. He doesn't want them. And you know, we have the Zambezi, which is a very big obstacle, which was a problem also to the ZPRA forces. Sometimes if you go in, it's difficult to come back. It injuring obviously or it injuring obviously or amapoda ngabe etresile alitata or ale ambush you to they fire it, you run away and leave it. Then it's always a million puma over Botswana. So this chief of staff, HIT, wanted a commando unit, under what circumstances they mustn't go to Botswana. Even if it injured, but ambushiwe or what, they must temporarily go inside, organize themselves, and cross the Zambezi back to Zambia. And this commando unit must not be deployed to go right inside forever. No. Anywhere where the commandos are needed, he wanted them to go hit a target, go back. If they are needed, say northern side, hit a target and go back. So from Morogoro there, I was chosen to join the commando unit, even though the commando unit did not last, and unfortunately also that chief of staff also immediately died with HIT. So from there, we deployed I was deployed in the front, in the northern front, Shirundu area, around about 1976.
So that's where you operated till?
That's where I operated.
Till independence?
No, not till independence. I operated in that front from 1976 up to 77. Then I went back to Zambia. I went for further training in Mogadishu, Somali. That was around 1978.
So what was your specialty?
I was an infantry commander.
Okay.
I was just an infantry commander. I didn't specialize in any other one. So after I went to in Somalia, I did cadet training as an infantry, a platoon commander. an infantry platoon commander. We came back. I was deployed also at Chirundu. That was around 1978. I was called back. I joined the regular battalions.
The ZPRA regular battalion?
Yes.
So tell us about your first battle.
Yes. My first battle in the front was in 1976 when I was coming from Morogoro. In 1976, that was the period of the Geneva Conference. I have forgotten the date and the day, but on the Geneva Conference, when the Geneva Conference was opened in Switzerland, we are about 12 ZPRA forces, and that operation was planned purposely by our commander. Commander was based. 12 o'clock that night, we were hitting Manapur's camp, such that the operation was coinciding with the operation of the chairman of the Geneva Conference. That camp was attacked, and we hit it so extensively. Unfortunately, we did not assault, but we were 12 of us using about 6 bazookas. The firepower was so strong, but we didn't assault. That was my first baptism of power when I went to the Zambezi River.
So did the guys return fire?
Yes, the Rhodesians returned fire. We could hear them giving instructions to fire, but we continued firing, say at least 10 to 15 minutes in that camp.
So when you then withdrew or ran away, they never followed back?
No one followed. The damage was so extensive, it wasn't easy to follow during that night. In the morning, yes, of course, helicopters and spotter planes were busy now trying to take route or to trace exactly how. But obviously they knew, because the camp is right in the river, they knew these people have already rode back to Zambia.
So, after that, did you gain confidence or you were...
Yeah, we gained a lot of confidence. It is unfortunately because in that group, most of the guys are no longer there, but there is one guy, I always meet him in town, Unkomo. We always talk about it. I don't know these days whether he's still there.
How many regular battalions did you have?
All in all, I don't know, but initially when I was there, I think we formed from 1 battalion up to 5th battalion at Mlongushi barracks. But of course, I don't know how many battalions.
So you were really ready to have a formal, conventional army?
Definitely. Our battalions had passed the stage of guerrilla warfare, because from there we were deployed. We didn't only form and remain in the camps. We formed those battalions. I was in the 1st battalion myself, having a platoon. We went to...
Who was the commander of the 1st battalion?
It's somebody called Madliwa.
Okay.
I think you have heard about him.
Madliwa Khumalo.
Madliwa Khumalo. Ironically, when he came to the struggle, he was welcomed by me at Kariba. So we were deployed. We fought about 7 days with the Rhodesians.
So are you the part of the team that fought the Battle of the Gorges?
Yes.
That the Rhodesians always write about?
Definitely.
Tell us about that.
You see, in that battle, I don't know which part do you want.
What I know is that the battle lasted for about 7 days.
Yes, we lasted about 7 days.
The Rhodesians failed to actually take you off the location. Yes,
definitely. The Rhodesians failed to take us off, but we had a problem of a supply route until our ammunition was dwindling. Then we decided to withdraw command element, battalion HQ, we decided to withdraw. But we withheld the pressure for 7 days. I was there myself, third platoon, third company, and commanding the first platoon.
So what do you think, do you call this one of your successes?
Yes, I call it one of our successes because, as you know, the Rhodesians had a lot of firepower. But that firepower, for 7 days, we could hold them. And the fact that it is not them who pushed us out of those positions. No, it is us, after planning with our supplies might run out. Now it is better we leave the positions. And the number of casualties that we had, they were not significant. We didn't have some significant casualties. The unit left being intact, which we call in military a withdrawal. It was not a defeat as such, because if we were defeated, we were going to have experience a disarray. People running all over the.
What kind of arms did you have in this battle?
We had simple artillery, gun 57, we had Grad-Ps, then we had infantry weapons, AKs, the detector of LMGs, and bazooka and so forth. Of course, we had a lot of anti-air cover. That is the advantage which made us to consume the pressure.
Because reading from the books written by Rhodesia, these guys were mostly coming in by plane, and yes, they could not understand why they were missing the target.
Yes, because we had a lot of anti-airs, I was trying to articulate. We had a lot of anti-air, 2-barreled ZQ, 1-barreled ZQ. So it was very difficult for the Rhodesian planes to do what they want, or to pick the target according to their choice or according to what they want. Because when the plane was coming, it could be repulsed. So as a result, it will miss the target.
And they'll come back the second day?
They will, no, the whole day. They will come being 2, 1, 2, 1, the whole day. From at least 6 o'clock in the morning until around 6 in the evening. And then the second day is the same thing. They were even trying, especially on the flank that I was myself, they were even trying to come on foot. So we could repulse them from time to time, depending on the day.
So if you have the Battle of the Gorges, I think within the history of ZPRA, this was one of the longest battles. For interest's sake, for someone who is not going to war, you're fighting for 7 days, how do you cook?
You cook at night.
So during the day you're in your position?
Yes, during the day you're in your positions. Yeah, but in that scenario, in that situation, you couldn't cook during the day, because during the day there was bombardment throughout, because they were, after when the planes withdraw, they put artillery. Mortars will come, pound the place. You could not cook during the day. Then we were cooking at night.
So you knew Rhodesians would not attack you at night?
Yes, we knew. Even if they attack at night, it's not effective. Plus, in that reason, we were not staying on the ground. Mainly, we were staying in shelters, coming out only when there is an enemy threat to invade these positions. Otherwise, most of the time, we're in shelters and in trenches.
So you moved from this is towards independence, I think it's around...
Yeah, that was around 1979.
Yeah.
Yes, because talks were going on in Lancaster whilst we were fighting in the Gorges.
If I remember well, that was the last air operation of the Rhodesians, and probably your last battle as well as ZPRA.
Yes.
Yeah. So you lived there. Where did you go?
Yes, but I had some minor injuries after that. You see, when I was with my partner, a bomb fell in front of our trench. Yawele mnyango ibomb. So ngisachaywa ngayisplinter ngangena inhlabathi. So from there I needed some medical attention. So I was taken, the unit withdrew. We went to a place called the Chinyunyu in Zambia. From there I was given permission. I went to Lusaka for treatment. Yeah, I think it lasted about some few days. On the day that I was okay, I left hospital. I went to FC, like a freedom camp, to take my weapon and go back to my unit. When I was at the quartermaster trying to inquire with weapon with some modalities to sign it up and take it, I met our chief of staff, Utup, and you said you know him. Then what? Ulapa, Mati, I'm here, commander. Why? Ngati ayantu yakwadla phana ngalimala. Oh, usunjani? Ngati I sang right. Ngati no. Buyala. Zwana. Antu zulu ukuthi ama talks London successful. Ngati hayi kanjani. I don't know. Ngati yes, ama talks alokhu uzumdala uyabuya ntambama. So kuyahanjwa ku Rhodesians. So I've been given a lot of young boys la engihamba labo. Tomorrow morning, no omnye kaphume wena ungeni wahle wabiza finish no uSilver is there lokho ekhona la wabiza uSilver buya la khipha lo umuntu oyi1 thatha leli ID unike lo ihleli mthatha ipicture ngiyahamba la. That is how I left my unit.
Abuya Zimbabwe lapha what happened?
So safike Harare ke laphana saya eZimseki. I think that is Zimseki. So thina ama ZPRA safike ekuseni ngo11 o'clock. Sa ahlangabezwa laphana ngama officials awe ZAP. Thina sahlangabezwa ngikona. Sasilo lookout masuku ami commander wethu. Sahlangabezwa ngikhona siselusaka sisiza ngapha umdala was address unkomo madoda sesisiye ekhaya sesisiya campaigner ilizwe selithethwe and we are going to campaign as a patriotic front. Akula ZANU akula ZAP, we will campaign as one. So itomele libe yazi nxa lisiye ekhaya ayebo ye. So we're given our weapons, we're full armed. We went to Salisbury. A lot of people welcomed us. Figure Salisbury lapana. It was difficult to move. Babiso zupko. Yangena phakathi ku runway. Sesiku runway lapana. Innocent says no. Ngicela uyacela mara ngifuna ukubingelela amajaha la. You know, estonches ZANU member. Sengena lapha linjani madoda asikhona zwanini la ngiyakwazi Lusaka unkomo ulitshele wathi siza campaign ndawonye. No, asoke sikampeni ndawonye. Siza campaign zehlukene. Sifuna ukubona ukuthi who is who. Uthi mbani ozawina. So let's finish madoda ndlawo nongabantu. Nasi division seyikhuluma kadesu Innocent. Then we went there tambama amazandla lawa abuya angiyanga etimini yabahlangabezayo bahamba abanye ababahlangabezayo tambama. Then we stayed some few days uDongogara wafa. We were already there thina sasasipikile Salisbury. Then after some few days, a meeting was convened. What design our assembly point, let deployment with who is going where, and the address our commander monitoring force say John Auckland, Major General Sir John Auckland. So we're given our places. I was deployed at Juliet Assembly Point as a ZAN. And the Juliet Assembly Point here was combined because Pite Bridge, our operations are a Pite Bridge. Both forces were operating at Pite Bridge. ZANLA were there, and the lad were there. Ngahamba londota utwa states mtswanyiriri owezani simthule monitoring force. Safika ke ngale la inyu sector nalama inyu my sector ngafika ngale ngabona ama izakhamuzi asking ukuthi ama forces angithi anga. Then they told me, I addressed them. Then sangena ke Assembly Point at Juliet as a ZAN.
There's one thing interesting about Zenzele. We've always been told that there were Mukonto kept as Zenzele. Did you get to?
Yes, I was the first ZPRA commander to talk to them, to convince them to come to the Assembly Point. I had one guy, of course, who I resisted Akulu party. I ended up calling him, talking to him, excelling with Indole is at your advantage.
Do you remember him?
I don't remember him. You don't have to talk too much. When I come to the Assembly Point, rest, next card is so right, organize your team and move to South Africa, because otherwise this is the aim why you are here.
So how many were there, the ANC?
Yeah, it was a platoon strength. I think they were about 23, 24 initially. Because Babylon bengena, so ngasela need to ukuthi mina ngibabone. Sebengene kwala kuma platoon commanders bengene kuma units.
So if you look at this, to South Africans, the ceasefire in Zimbabwe was to their advantage, to their disadvantage, because they already moved. They were now going to South Africa.
Yeah, it was their disadvantage because subsequently after independence, the government could not accommodate them, of which it gave them a lot of disadvantage. ZPRA was moving with them. Limpopo let them go to South Africa. But now after independence, I think there is a rule. I'm not aware how they operated, but I believe there are some problems.
Yeah.
Yes. From Assembly Point Juliet myself, I was moved to St. Paul's, Mike Assembly Point. I also met some South Africans, not in the Assembly Point now, but around Lupani. Because one day when I was there at business center, amanyama kerela angiti aba operator laba abantu bomkhonto bangibiza komandiri biyobona lapho labantu bomkhonto lapha. Then I went there, I found them, they were about 6 or 7. Hi guys, yes. Any problem, but high problem ayiko, we only need ukuthi sidle and they were continuing with our journey. That's fine. We organized food for them and they proceeded. So ngiyabona ngedwa ukuthi after independence, because they had no permanent base here, kwakungasaqondakala ukuthi what is their supporting. Ngiyabona ukuthi they had some calamities somehow.
Yeah. So then the integration time, where do you go?
Integration time, I went to ZMA. Unfortunately, what I didn't expect happened to me. I came out being a sergeant.
So who are deciding the rank, if I may
The
understand?
British.
So the British will decide the rank?
Yes.
Based
yes.
on what?
Based on their own, I don't know what criteria they were using. If they hate you, if you're ugly, they will give you a small rank. If they hate your history, they will give you a small rank. Whatever, I don't know what they were, how they were balancing it.
So what did you expect to? Which rank were you expecting?
Of course, I expected I could be a major or a captain if things go seriously wrong.
If things go seriously wrong?
Yes.
But if it gone seriously right, which...
if things they go seriously right, I was expecting one captain or major. But unfortunately, things went seriously wrong. I came out being a sergeant.
So how did that make you feel?
I failed to work. Can you imagine being as an officer commanding 2,000 assembly point, being an adjutant of any? Because as an officer in an assembly point was almost an adjutant of that camp, because we are only answerable to the commander of the camp. Look at Zenzele, more than 2,000 something men. Look at St. Paul, more than 2,000 men under you. You come out being a platoon sergeant with 30 men. And you are a deputy, because if you are a platoon sergeant in a regular army, there is a lieutenant, the owner of the officer, the owner of the platoon. And some of my fellow comrades were saying, no, okay, you cannot accept this. Why can you just leave it and start afresh? Go back to an assembly point and come, and I said, no. It doesn't work that way. There is no problem. We lost the election. We lost the leadership. If Mtara is no longer president, who am I to do that? Let us continue. Let's wait just like this. There's no problem.
So obviously, moral-wise, you were disappointed.
Definitely. I was even failing to work. I was disappointed.
So how do you proceed? Where do you go?
I proceeded being the sergeant as I was. I was integrated at 3-2 battalion, Sanzakuru Barracks, Rusape. I worked there for some few months. Then they said no, they need instructors, a brigade, 3 brigade. So I was chosen to go to 3 brigade as an instructor with PMAT. You see this PMAT monitoring. It's one PMAT advisory training team. Yeah. So I was attached there. I was attached with the PMAT. So I worked with that PMAT team. We were training ZPRA, we were at least integrating the ZNA forces with ZPRA and ZANLA together with the Rhodesians. So I stayed in that unit for a long time with the PMAT until PMAT 3 brigade. They said all PMAT must be fused up. So with all different teams, Masingo, Tinemtari, and so forth, were taken to Blawayo. So they sort of, what word can we use it? They harmonized it. So all the teams went to Inkomo. I became an instructor there. So after some time, we faced a problem of water. Then they said, PMAT will choose between Palapala and Inyanga. So they chose Inyanga. We went to Inyanga. And that was somewhere in 1983. We operated Inyanga. They changed even the name. This was no longer PMAT, it became PPS, Battalion Battle School. PPS, yes. So I worked at PPS there until 1986. Yes.
So when the 5th Brigade was being trained in Commando, you were somewhere near?
No, I was not near. When the 5th Brigade was, it was at PPS. I mean, I was at 3 Brigade, and they were at Nyanga. It is when they left, they sent in militia. Then in militia, puma kwangena thina.
So militia were my youth.
My youth, my militia konoko wachichi 3 Brigade. But I don't know why just sitting on my militia. Ngoba ngibona thina 5th Brigade ya deploy eMathepeleland ngo-1983. Thina lathi safika lapha ngo-1983, which means otherwise sachiyana ngama-months. Angikwazi ukuthi okuyimilitia lokana kwathi role kumbe babegadile kuphela, I don't know. But ngo-1983 we took over that camp lama British.
So okay. So then when do you retire from there?
A lot happened after that because success taking company now. It is in 1986 I went to Mozambique as an instructor to train Ifrerimo. It was also ZNAT now, Zimbabwe National Army Advisor and Training Team. You know these people.
Yeah.
They copy everything that is British. So I went to Mozambique in 86 up until 1988. Then in 1988 I came back Zimbabwe. So I think I was corresponding by that time, and it was very difficult. We were in Mozambique because I remember in 1985 I was trying to write my JC in Kandan. I had booked, but because I was in Mozambique I couldn't get permission to come back. I didn't write that JC. So in 1988 I had written EO. About 3 subjects. So in 1999 I came back. I went back to PPS. So I intensified my studies and I wrote EO. Ngazuza futhi ezinye 2. Asengile 5. I decided to change my infantry and join education corps. So in 1990 I came to Llewellyn Barracks to Zimbabwe Demobilization, Zimbabwe Army Education Corps. I joined Demobilization. I changed my course Llewellyn and the Madliwa Polytechnic. Then I passed. So I repaged to education corps. Masuka go infantry. Then after finishing my course, I was reposted to Nyanga, now as a unit education officer. And I was promoted to a warrant officer class 2, 002. Masensiba ngu unit education officer eNyanga. So ngahlala eNyanga lapana ngo 1981, in fact ngafika ngo 82.
82 or 92?
92. It was 92.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry for that. So masensiba ngu unit education officer at PPS. So 93, 94 kwasokuthiwa no, 93 ngcono ngiyefundisa eMtare i-adult education. Bona abantu abangaqedanga ama-O's and so forth. So ngasensiye eMtare kuyafundisa adult education. Then semtare ngale ngasengizuza indawo manje yokuyenza i-formal teaching eMarymount Teachers College. Ngasensiya eMarymount Teachers College ngo-95 January. So ngiqeda eMarymount Teachers College, I was posted to Llewellyn as a teacher kuba ebantwaneni. So sengifike eLllewellyn lapana, because I was a warrant officer class 2, I was automatically chosen as a headmaster eLllewellyn. Ngahlala eLllewellyn bese ngingu headmaster lapana for 98 years. 99. 2000 I went to Poko eGweru. So ngathi semphume eGweru lapha sengingu lieutenant. I continued ngingu headmaster eLllewellyn. Then I was transferred to Emaswingo Primary School. Lapha ngaphumela khona ngo-204.
30 pages.
30 pages.
So when you are looking back and reflecting, do you think you would have, ZPRA would have done better? Where did ZPRA get it wrong?
There are a number of factors. First of all, ZPRA was too lenient. Ngase reflect njengabantu ababengabanikazi sesikhangela ukuthi exactly that's individual opinion now.
Yes, yes.
I think we were too smart. We lived with people who were fighting with us, ZANLA, who were very, very hostile to us. We knew exactly what they want and so forth. I don't know, somewhere kuma politicians zethu, la kuma commanders zethu, some people were not performing as expected. They slept on duty. Because intention is, as I was telling you, when we were going together, they were not hiding. But when we go home, we will deal with you. But some people chose to say, they are playing, but they did. Something that we already knew. And we pretended as if there is nothing. I don't know where this thing came from. And the other thing, I also think deployment yet. Because we're vice-versing things, taking senior commanders, especially management, making them juniors, taking our juniors, making them their seniors. I think that thing also contributed. There were a number of factors that affected us, and we found ourselves being.
But do you think it was ZPRA, especially after the death of Mangena and the other guy, do you think also tribalism came in terms of the person who was to succeed?
As far as I'm concerned, no, it didn't. The succession and others, I think it was very smart. And I don't know, because outside I didn't do office work. And I was not there in the corridors in the offices at Rusaga and so forth. There was kept busy. As a guerrilla, I was always in the front, and when I joined the battalions, I was always with the fighting units. I didn't see tribalism manifesting itself. Go ZPRA. No, I didn't see it.
That was a very interesting and informative program. What I find interesting is that the more we talk to ZPRA cadres, the more we get. And what I like is that these stories, there's a way that they interlink. So you get one part from another, and the other one completes the puzzle. Of course, we are telling things that happened so many years ago. So there are those people who are going to dispute the history, and that's the purpose of telling the stories, so that we can have many narratives and they compete against each other until we get the truth. So we have never claimed of telling the biblical truth about the liberation struggle or the role played by his ZPRA. We are just trying our part to understand what ZPRA did. As much as other people have told the story of ZANLA, of ANC, of Madzakuzaku, of Fumarabano, of Fumorabano, we are telling the story of ZPRA. And we want to know what has happened. So we are free to argue, to debate about these stories, to question some of the things that are being said in these programs until we get the truth, we distill, we have an idea of what happened. Because currently we're at zero. Little has been said by ZPRA. We know very little information. We know less about the role of ZPRA in the liberation struggle. And our aim is to try and find the bits and pieces that we can get. The unfortunate part is that many of these people who were involved in these battles or in the liberation struggle are gone, dead, and some of them we can't locate them. But those few that we're going to find, we are going to preserve the history so that the story of ZPRA can be told. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Till we meet again in other programs, have a good day.